Welcome to BBC News, broadcasting to our viewers in North America and around the globe. My name is Mike Embley. Our top stories. The former U.S. Attorney General says she warned President Trump's administration that General Michael Flynn was open to Russian blackmail before he was forced to resign.
The Russians also knew about what General Flynn had done, and the Russians also knew that General Flynn had misled the vice president and others.
Riot police in Venezuela fired tear gas at protesters, the latest demonstrations against the president's plan to reform the constitution. Record numbers of migrants have tried to reach Europe so far this year. We have a special report on the rescue in the Mediterranean.
These women look really exhausted. They're coming on one by one. One of the women I've seen has got a little child with her.
And the church in Chicago offering sanctuary to families fighting President Trump's deportation orders. Hello. A congressional hearing has been told President Trump was warned against hiring Michael Flynn as his national security advisor because General Flynn was open to blackmail by the Russians. Sally Yates, former acting head of the Justice Department, told senators General Flynn had lied about his contacts with the Russian ambassador. Despite this, he stayed in his highly sensitive job for more than 2 weeks before he was forced to resign. Here's some of Sally Yates' testimony.
That we weren't the only ones that knew all of this, that the Russians also knew about what General Flynn had done, and the Russians also knew that General Flynn had misled the vice president and others. Because in the media accounts, it was clear from the vice president and others that they were repeating what General Flynn had told them, and that this was a problem because not only did we believe that the Russians knew this, but that they likely had proof of this information. And that created a compromise situation, a situation where the national security advisor essentially could be blackmailed by the Russians.
Sally Yates giving testimony there. White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer has blamed the Obama administration for not revoking General Flynn's security clearance in April 2016. I spoke just now to the BBC's Netta Tawfiq in New York.
When you looked at past White House comments on this, Reince Priebus, the White House counsel, basically had said, oh, well, it wasn't any alarm bells that Sally Yates had rung. It was merely just a heads up, and that their lawyers had looked into this, and there was no problem with Michael Flynn ahead of when they forced his resignation. Well, they had been waiting for months to hear from Sally Yates today, and she basically said that she had urgently warned the administration. 3 times she spoke with them about how Michael Flynn's comments and lies, she said to the vice president, could really put the country and himself in a vulnerable position, open to Russian blackmail. And so she very forcefully came out today to kind of go against the administration's narrative on this so far, saying that this was an issue that she had raised to them. They had actually asked her at the time, should he be fired? She said, well, that's not something for me to answer. That's an issue for the administration. But she was subsequently fired, of course, if you remember, for refusing to defend President Trump's travel ban. And then, as you say, Michael Flynn then stayed for an additional 18 days. But so this does fill the gap in kind of what exactly happened that made Michael Flynn stay on for so long.
The president himself weighing in as well on Twitter, saying the whole story of collusion is a total hoax, a taxpayer-funded charade. He also says of Director Clapper's evidence, Director Clapper told the hearing what everybody, including the fake media, already knows, no evidence of collusion. Actually, what James Clapper said surely is that he wasn't made aware of the evidence because he wasn't made aware of the investigation.
Yeah, it's interesting because this Senate Judiciary Committee is just one of 3 congressional probes. There's also the FBI intelligence agency probes. And so President Trump has, for a long time now, been very, very critical of comments coming out about this, calling this, as you said there, a hoax. He wants to kind of get past this in his presidency. The allegations into Russian meddling in the election, he feels delegitimizes his presidency. He also, has called this hoax, this idea, has called it a hoax that there's any collusion between the Trump administration and the Russians. And so President Trump has been very forceful to kind of counteract this narrative. But what we've seen from several testimony, I mean, the FBI Director James Comey has said that they are looking into, any connections between the Trump administration and Russia. The Director of National Intelligence did reveal today that an American, he wouldn't say whether it was a member of Congress or a member of the Trump transition team, but that they had been revealed in the kind of incidental collection of intelligence, and they were investigating that individual. So while President Trump tries to kind of highlight some parts of this testimony today in this hearing, it still, doesn't really close the door to the overall investigations that are ongoing. It doesn't kind of clear this issue for him, and I think that's what's really frustrating to the president. He wants to kind of move on from this issue, but with several probes going on and continual hearings, there seems to be more questions raised rather than answered.
Neda Tawfiq first there in New York. Riot police have fired tear gas at protesters in Venezuela during more demonstrations against President Maduro's plan to reform the constitution. Masked men leading thousands of people in Caracas clashed with police as the political crisis deepens. Sarah Corker reports.
Caracas has once again become a battlefield. With makeshift shields and helmets, thousands of anti-government protesters faced off with police. Undeterred by tear gas and armoured cars, they're trying to put pressure on President Nicolas Maduro. They want early elections to remove him and to solve Venezuela's economic crisis.
It's the only thing we have left, the streets. We have nothing else because the constitution isn't respected. Human rights are violated. The government does what it wants.
Demonstrators say the president's plan to reform the constitution will sideline the National Assembly. They accuse him of repression and amassing power. Since unrest erupted 5 weeks ago, 36 people have been killed and hundreds more injured. The leader of the opposition was at the front of Monday's march and encouraged more people to join his cause.
Everyone who voted for Chavez, who is unhappy today, who doesn't believe in this government and agrees with us that this country needs change, I invite them to join in the front in defense of the Constitution.
But government officials say they are now facing an armed insurrection. There were more violent clashes as protesters targeted a military airport and later a police checkpoint. President Maduro says this crisis is a US-backed capitalist conspiracy and accused opponents of trying to topple him by force. And red-shirted Maduro supporters also rallied in Caracas on Monday. Yet these Venezuelans say severe food shortages and high unemployment have pushed them to their limit. With a week of protests ahead, they refuse to back down. Sarah Corker, BBC News.
Let's quickly round up some more of the main stories for you. 82 Nigerian schoolgirls just freed by the extremist group Boko Haram have met their country's president. They were escorted to the reception in the capital, Abuja, by armed soldiers after a checkup at a medical center. They're among more than 270 kidnapped from their school in Chibok 3 years ago. An ally of the Philippines president has denied there's been a wave of extrajudicial killings since he took office 10 months ago, despite the fact that President Duterte pledged to kill drug traffickers, as he put it. Senator Alan Peter Cayetano claimed to the UN Human Rights Council it was a misunderstanding. Violent clashes in the town of Kolini in South Africa, where 2 white men accused of killing a black teenager were released on bail. Police fired rubber bullets at protesters outside the court. The teenager's death sparked angry demonstrations last month. The French President-elect Emmanuel Macron is forming a new government. Will begin work once he's sworn in on Sunday. His political movement will alter its name as it focuses on winning a parliamentary majority next month. And more world leaders have been giving their reaction. The German leader Angela Merkel saying she's delighted. More than 7,000 migrants have been rescued from the Mediterranean in just the past few days. Italian officials fear as many as 200 drowned. It's thought they were trying to make the treacherous crossing from Libya in search of a new life in Europe. So far this year, numbers are 50% higher than the same time last year. Rita Chakrabarti spent the past week on a rescue ship.
7 uneventful days at sea with a rescue mission, and then suddenly this.
We have 2 rubber boats, possibly also 1 wooden boat. Team, please prepare on deck for rescue.
A scene, said the crew, like never before. First 2, then 3, then, as we were spotted, more and yet more boatloads of people veering towards us to rescue and to safety.
These women look really exhausted. They're coming on one by one. One of the women I've seen has got a little child with her.
This toddler named Blessing is one of the tiniest travellers. Her mother Joy, who's Nigerian, says she risked the journey because she couldn't return to her home country. She'd been working in Libya, where she was repeatedly kidnapped and ransomed for money.
I go to market. When I enter the taxi on my way, they stopped the taxi, dragged me inside another car. They go and lock me inside room. They told me to control my husband to bring money.
I asked her what she hoped for from the future.
If I see what I will do, because everything is around me, I have baby.
Blessing is happily ignorant of her mother's grief and oblivious to the peril that she's just faced.
Still they come. Goodness knows how many people were crammed into that rubber dinghy there. They're all processed now, checked. This man's clearly in pain.
The vast majority on board are men of working age, from West and East Africa and also from Asia. There are many factors driving them, but the turmoil in Libya is key. These scars, Imran told me, were inflicted on him in Bangladesh, which is where he's from. He says he was targeted by the local mafia and so left for Libya to work as a cook. But he went months unpaid and was beaten if he asked for his wage. He told me he took the rubber boat because Libya was dangerous. He had a chance of life if he left. Libya was intolerable. He couldn't do it anymore. Last year broke records for the number of migrants making the crossing, and this year looks set to top that. Italy has borne the weight of housing and caring for them, but opinion is hardening, with claims that these rescue missions are a taxi service for migrants, and even that the aid agencies are colluding with Libyan people smugglers to bring the migrants to Europe.
Our sole mission is to save the lives of people, and especially children, who are escaping violence, persecution and extreme poverty. We have no contact whatsoever with people smugglers.
Earlier in the week, a body was spotted. The sea is a graveyard too. The search will go on. This crossing from Libya has become an established route run by ruthless criminals who care little whether their desperate passengers will see another day. Rita Chakrabarti, BBC News.
Much more to come for you on BBC News, including this. We take you to a church in Chicago offering sanctuary to families fighting President Trump's deportation orders.
I, Nelson Rhodesas Mandela, do hereby swear to be faithful to the Republic of South Africa.
After 6 years of construction and numerous delays, the Channel Tunnel has been formally opened by the Queen and President Mitterrand. But the tunnel is still not yet ready for passengers and freight services to begin.
For centuries, Christianity and Islam struggled for supremacy. Now, the Pope's visit symbolizes their willingness to coexist.
Roger Bannister became the first man in the world to run a mile in under 4 minutes.
Memories of victory as the VE celebrations reach their climax.
This night is dedicated to everyone who believes in a future of peace and freedom.
to have you with us on BBC News. The latest headlines this hour. The former US Attorney General has said she warned President Trump's administration that General Michael Flynn was open to Russian blackmail before he was eventually forced to resign. Riot police in Venezuela again fired tear gas at protesters, the latest demonstrations against the president's plan to reform the Constitution. The governor of Texas has banned from his state the so-called sanctuary cities, where police tend not to carry out checks on a person's immigration status. That could trigger the first legal battle over an issue that's even drawn churches into the line of fire. Olivia Lace-Evans visited one parish in Chicago that's offering to hide undocumented families and daring the authorities to intervene.
We're going to tell them, here they are. You're going to separate this family. You're going to do it while the whole world is watching. The election of President Donald Trump, it has injected an incredible amount of fear into our community. We have 5 families that have already been given a deadline where they have to come with a one-way ticket and a bag packed because they're going to be deported and their family basically is going to be destroyed. After the church services, we go through each case individually to see what we can do. We have attorneys that are with us, and we're fighting those cases of deportation individually using whatever legal avenue is open to us. But at the end of the day, we want our families, as a last resort, to take sanctuary here in the church.
Pues él nos ha dicho que somos criminales y terroristas, pero yo solamente soy una mamá que trabaja y lucha día a día para sacar adelante a mis hijos.
I'm a U.S. citizen, and I applied for her to be legal in the country, but somebody made a mistake with the application. We don't have anything in Mexico. We don't, the whole life we are living here, we got nothing there.
So this is the shower that we created. Now people don't have to leave the building in order to take a shower here. That's what sanctuary is. You have to provide them with everything they have in a home, and that's what we're going to be doing here for our families.
Donald Trump, right now he's fighting in Syria for protecting kids, but right here in the country, he's breaking life for these kids, U.S. citizen kids, separate from the fathers, mothers. I don't know how he's doing this for the community.
Olivia Lace-Evans with that report there from Chicago. Let's take you back to our main story, the investigation into Russian interference in the US election. We speak to Jonathan Landay, national security correspondent for Reuters based in Washington. Jonathan, thanks for your time. Good to talk to you. On Twitter, President Trump is presenting Sally Yates's testimony, also Director Clapper's testimony, as either good news or fake news. It could be bad news for his administration, couldn't it?
Well, yeah, the Sally Yates' testimony before the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee raised new questions about what the White House knew about General Flyn's activities or communications with the Russians and why it didn't act, as well as what President Trump knew and when he knew it. So this is not going away. Her testimony raised new questions.
Yeah, because it makes it clear, doesn't it? Despite warnings from a very senior legal authority, President Trump knowingly gives a potentially compromised person access to sensitive intelligence. It seems General Flynn even stayed in the Oval Office for a phone conversation between President Trump and President Putin.
Indeed, and he was also present at conversations down in Mar-a-Lago in Florida concerning North Korea after missile launch. And and of course he was present for whenever President Trump took his daily intelligence brief.
It seems to have gone almost under the radar that James Clapper, apart from describing Russian interference as the transcendent issue, went on to confirm that, yes, European allies did pass on intel about contacts between the Trump campaign and Russia, and said that intel is quite sensitive.
Indeed, he did, and not only that, he confirmed the report, I believe, in The Guardian, that the first information that was provided by a European intelligence service came from Britain's intelligence service. So all this doesn't stop here then, Jonathan? Not at all. In fact, as I said earlier, there are new questions. Sally Yates testified that she delivered the warning to White House counsel Don McGahn first on the 26th of January. We have Sean Spicer, the White House spokesman, on February 14th saying that McGahn immediately went to the president with this warning, and yet 4 days earlier, President Trump told reporters he had no knowledge about General Flynn and any conversations he had with the Russian ambassador to the United States concerning sanctions that the U.S. imposed under former President Barack Obama for Russian interference in the U.S. presidential election campaign. Sounds like we're all coming back to this one. Jonathan, thank you very much. My pleasure. Now, Fox News anchor Bill O'Reilly stepped down, of course, last month, accused of sexual harassment by a number of women. Now, one of them has flown to London to try to block Rupert Murdoch, who owns Fox, from taking full control of Sky. She met the media regulator Ofcom, which is investigating whether Murdoch's company, 21st Century Fox, would be fit and proper to take full control of Sky. This from our media editor, Amal Rajan.
No.
Hello?
You should be worried about BBC as well.
I should be worried. Are you worried about the Ofcom deal and what this Fox scandal might do for Ofcom?
Yeah.
Do you have any concerns about what Ofcom might say about what's happening at Fox News?
I think
that's what's right.
Getting record ratings and Fox News is getting record ratings.
Yeah.
And so I'm not worried at all.
And you don't think Ofcom are going to consider what's happening at Fox News? Will it enter
Nothing's happening at Fox News. Nothing. Okay.
You lost 3 of your top people. That's something, isn't it? There's a sexual and racial harassment allegation.
Not the third person at all. Nothing against him. And the other 2 are quite separate. So goodbye.
Lots of people that we've spoken to in Manhattan, journalists who've been covering the story, lawyers who are acting for some of the alleged victims of Fox News' sexual and racial harassment allegations they deny, they say, well, this is about Ofcom. This is all about the fact that the Fox News scandal is starting to have some pretty eerie echoes with the phone hacking scandal of 6 or 7 years ago. Now, we know that that ended up badly for the Murdoch family because the phone hacking scandal meant they had to withdraw their bid for B-Sky B. The danger for them is that the timing of the headlines coming out of this place means that, well, their ambitions could be thwarted again. Rupert seems pretty relaxed about it. I wonder whether or not he should be. Amal Rajan there. On the west coast of Ireland, people are flocking to a remote island to see a sandy beach that has reappeared. That is the word. It was washed away by storms more than 30 years ago. But a freak tide has dumped thousands of tons of sand back there again. Keith Doyle has the story.
Achill Island on the west coast of Ireland has many beautiful beaches, but for the past 30 years, this was not one of them. However, nature has now returned Dua Beach to its former beauty. Storms in the 1980s stripped the beach, but over 10 days, ocean currents have deposited thousands of tons of sand to recreate its 300-metre white sandy beach.
The most probable reason this beach has reformed is due to 2 things. It's either a change in sediment supply from further up or down the coast that has brought a fresh amount of sediment to this beach, or it could be due to a change in environmental conditions, either an alteration in the wave climate or a series of tides that has provided the ideal conditions for this beach to reform.
Dua Beach on Achill Island is just about as far west as you can get in Ireland and Europe. Thousands of tourists visit here every year. Having a new beach has delighted the locals and the tourist board.
Yesterday we had gridlock here in the village with cars and camper vans and motorcyclists and people coming from all over Ireland and the UK to see our miraculous new beach. The people here have always spoke about their days on the beach, how they enjoyed coming down here as kids, and now to have it back for their kids is absolutely unbelievable. The people of the island are thrilled. We already have 5 blue flag beaches, and hopefully if we keep our beach here in Doual, we'll have a 6th.
Now that the spring high tides have passed, there is hope that the new beach will stay in place, at least for the summer. But this is the wild Atlantic coast, where the sea could reclaim the beach again. But for now, people are making the most of this latest tourist attraction. Keith Doyle, BBC News.
Just one final story. In Malaysia, customs officers have seized more than 700 kilos of pangolin scales, worth at least $2 million. It's thought they arrived on flights from African countries via Dubai. Pangolins, also known as scaly anteaters, but you knew that, are among the most trafficked mammals because of increasing demand in Asia. The scales are used in traditional medicine. Much more on all the news anytime for you on the BBC website. You can reach me and most of the team on Twitter. Thank you for watching.